terrified. I've got two sons, both teenagers, and I'm terrified each time they step out the house.
You are. All right, let's go first, as I said, to Joy Morrissey.
Michelle, thank you so much for your question. I understand what you're feeling, and a lot of Londoners are feeling the same thing, worried about their children going to school. And what I'm advocating for as the mayoral candidate is to put a holistic approach to tackle youth violence. So I want to see a wraparound approach. I'd like to see more care for after-school clubs, more investment in psychological support in families.
What does that mean?
Well, if you look, there's an academy. I think it's called Oasis Academy, and they have a very good wraparound approach to tackle knife crime. But it helps the student in all aspects of life, not just with academics, but sort of their whole life once they leave school and coming back and everything else. And they've had a dramatic drop in knife crime. And I'd like to also empower a lot of the grassroots charities. Things like Gangs United, Cracked It, that works with ex-offenders. They're doing fantastic work here in London, but they're not getting any funding, and I'd love to see them empowered.
But if I'm listening to drill music and I see my peers getting rich quick, driving BMWs, selling drugs and doing what else, why the hell would I want to go into one of these programs you just mentioned?
Well, what I think is we have to link it with employment, because you're absolutely right, Nick. It's about gangs are looked at as a way out, an economic advantage, going up, sort of almost like an apprenticeship. So we need to offer those opportunities. They don't see that they're getting the benefit from university or from going on. So, yeah.
Sean Bailey.
So for me, you have to separate these two things out. People say, look, it takes a village to raise a child, but there's two ends. The end is the preventative end and how you give children resilience. So for me, I've been a youth worker for 26 odd years now. It's about family services. It's about making families stronger, having parents understand the...
What if mum or dad's not interested, Mr. Bailey?
That's where the services become involved. And if you look at social services, and when you talk about a holistic approach, you must have the family in that conversation. Children,
but if dad is away and mum's not interested, you seem not to be addressing that.
You're right, Nick, but the point is this: you have to work with, most children have an adult in their life who is willing to support that child. You've got to work with what you've got. That's the first thing. The other end of it as well, of course, is you have to do something about the policing.
What do you mean do something about the policing?
So I released something yesterday talking about 1,000 extra police officers, because it's hard as a child in London not to get involved in crime if it's everywhere for you. So we need the police to press down on the kind of crimes that children are involved in. I think a lot of our children carry knives out of a place of fear, so we have to make them feel like they're safe before we can have the conversations with them about how you're going to go forward, how you're going to grow. And for me, the most powerful thing is employment for your parents, employment for you, for your child of that age.
Where are you going to create the jobs?
We have good employment levels in London, much better than the national average. Way below
but we've still
that.
got the crime problems.
You're right, because that's a slightly separate thing being driven by criminals. If you're talking about a holistic approach, what you're talking about is keeping young people away from that type of crime in the first place. And there's a lot of work you can do with families to give their children the resilience to avoid crime.
All right, let's get Andrew Boff into it.
What we've got to talk about, first of all, we've got to recognise that this is a public health emergency. It's getting worse and worse. We had two shootings in broad daylight yesterday at Rayners Lane.
And Kingsbury on Monday.
And Kingsbury on Monday. It's getting worse and worse. This is an emergency. This is not something the mayor can sit down and theorise about. He needs to take action now, and he isn't. But let's move on from him.
Yeah.
This current mayor, I'm saying.
Oh, I see, right, okay.
But first of all, we've got to realise that a lot of the things that have been mentioned aren't within the control of the GLA. We don't have a social services department that can go out and do family work. What we have, and we don't, for example, control education, but what we do have in that position as Mayor for London is the ability to pull people together, to work together in order to solve this problem, because the only way we're going to get this solved is together, and that means my plans are I set up a London Violence Reduction Commission. On that will be sitting the representatives of the boroughs. We're going to apply the tried and tested solutions that, for example, they used in Scotland, and we're going to apply them to London.
What did they do in Scotland?
Well, what they did is first of all, they brought all the agencies together. So social services, education, the NGOs, the voluntary organisations, and the police all sat in the same room. Too often we blame the police for this problem. But blaming the police for violence is a bit like blaming the London Ambulance Service for a road accident. That is not... we have to bring those agencies together. And Sean quite rightly says it does take a village to raise a child, but at the moment the village isn't being invited to help.
Right.
And we need to pull those on board, and we need to use the power of the mayor to be able to get those agencies working together.
Briefly in a sentence, how is the current incumbent faring?
Well, he's been offered that. He's been offered that, and he's rejected it it because it's all too difficult for him. So it's stuck on that very large pile of things he hasn't made a decision about. Right. Because we've got a mayor who is incapable of making decisions.
All right, Michelle, how do you respond to what you've heard?
Well, they're all saying this good things. I'm not sure who I would trust to put them into place.
OK, well, stay tuned. We're going to go through more questions. Michelle, thanks for getting us started. Is it, Sean Bailey, is it as simple as getting more cops?
No, but it's a big part of it, because as Andrew says, we have an emergency right now. 2 shootings in broad daylight. That is not something that youth work can answer. We need to pursue those people and find them and jail them.
But that's what the police are doing, Mr. Bailey.
And they are, and they need more more leadership on that.
Well, how will it be different when you come in, though? That's what they're doing
Because
already.
The first thing is, if you look at what's going on in London, we've had a massive spike in crime. London feels dangerous now, but we've had a reduction in convictions. We are detecting less crime and convicting less crime. That's the difference I would make. It'd be really important to catch criminals on the street.